long ball. It's going to go for a touchdown. The game's over. Webster Slaughter.
Metcalf will go for the score. Unbelievable.
45-40. Run, William, run. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown. Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Sight wants it all on this one for Logan, and he is there.
Jim Brown to the 30. Jim Brown is going to go in for another touchdown.
The Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow.
It is Baker Mayfield.
Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to a 1085 victory pod. The Cleveland Browns beat the Carolina Panthers today, 26-20. This is our fourth victory pod. We missed one, so we're excited to have another one of these for you. I'm your host, Anthony Joki, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host of the North Coast Sports, Jack McCurry. How you doing tonight, Jack?
I'm doing well, man. It has been a wild day in the NFL world, but we're sitting here for another victory pod, and I think we can officially say it, Anthony, with 3 weeks to go in the season, we are in the hunt.
We are in the hunt, and you're right up about it being a crazy day in the NFL. This has been one of the more memorable Sundays that I can remember this season, specifically in terms of NFL games. The rest of the AFC North lost. The Cleveland Browns won. This is the first time that this has happened since Week 9 of 2013. We still have another great game going on right now, just getting started between the Bears and the Rams. So this crazy Sunday of NFL games is going to continue here in a little bit. But obviously, we're here to talk Cleveland Browns. We're here to talk a victory, and it's awesome to have another victory pod in the tank for you. We're definitely getting used to these, and hopefully next season we're doing more victory pods than non-victory pods. But for now, let's jump right into this game and talk specifics. And I think things could not be understated about how well Baker Mayfield played today. He was 18 of 22 for 238 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. His 4 incomplete passes were all drops. So in essence, he completed every throw that he made that they didn't drop. So that's obviously a fantastic game for him. I would say his best throw was the touchdown to Jarvis Landry, and to me, that was the best throw I've seen from a Browns quarterback in my entire life. And obviously, I don't remember much before they left in 95, but ever since 99, I would have to say that that's the absolute best throw that I have ever seen a Browns quarterback make.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he was pinpoint accurate today all day long. I mean, going in, I think this was his first game in significant cold weather, I think, especially with, the wind coming off the lake and everything, but it didn't affect him at all. I mean, he hit everybody on the money. There was, like you said, there was the 4 incompletions, which were all drops, but he was fantastic again. Looking at his season stats, he's gotten his completion percentage up to 64.4%. And, I mean, you look at some of the numbers early on, before the coaching change, he wasn't accurate on a lot. And a lot of that had to do with drops, and a lot of that was he just wasn't accurate. But, since the coaching change, since Freddie Kitchens has taken over as offensive coordinator, Baker has flipped a switch, and he's been phenomenal. You take away the game last week against Houston in the first half, but Baker's been excellent. His numbers are amazing for a rookie quarterback, for a Browns quarterback since 99, and he's putting together a really solid season for not even starting the first 3 weeks of the year.
And he, with not starting those first few weeks and coming in that Jets game, do you think that he, obviously it's him and Saquon Barkley, but would you say that he's the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to rookie of the year?
Yeah, I would personally, and it's not just being Browns bias, but to look at what this Browns team was a year ago, and then the first few games without him, to see what he's done and how he's completely transformed this franchise, and has not only us fans believing, but the rest of the media is catching on. And when you see when they talk about the playoff picture and we're still on the hunt, it's because of number 6 and what he's done for this team and the organization that's got the whole city believing, got the whole organization believing. I mean, it's phenomenal what this kid has done. And, Barkley's having a monster year. I mean, today he had over 170 yards rushing and a touchdown, and what he's been able to do as a receiver as well. I mean, Barkley's phenomenal. I think it's going to be close on who wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. But right now I'd give the edge to Baker just because you have to look at the whole picture and what he's done for his team. While Barkley's been great, the Giants are still a really bad football team. And, you got to give the edge to Baker just because of the all-around team effort that the Browns have put rallying behind number 6.
Being behind number 6 is obviously Freddie Kitchens, and what he's been able to do over the last 5 weeks since taking over as offensive coordinator, I think can't be understated or overstated enough. Is it time to have real conversations that no matter who they bring in as head coach, that Freddie Kitchens needs to stay? Because with what he's been able to do with Baker Mayfield and help Baker grow as a young quarterback, is it time to have those conversations that no matter what, Freddie has to stay?
I think those conversations are being made inside the walls at Berea. And Keith Britton, who is the producer for Bull and Fox, said, quote, "Safe to say, after hearing some talk here today, there's key people in the Browns organization that would be pleased to have Freddie Kitchens around going forward if a new coach likes him." And that's the final conclusion at the end of the day. If whoever they bring in as a head coach likes Freddie Kitchens and likes the work he's done since taking over as offensive coordinator 5 weeks ago, then there's no doubt about it. Freddie Kitchens should remain the offensive coordinator, but at the end of the day, it should be the head coach's decision. If you try to force Freddie Kitchens on a new head coach, it's the same dysfunction that's kept this team down since 1999. I think Freddie Kitchens has been phenomenal. The play calling today, getting Landry involved in the running game and how he's helped revitalize some of these players' careers like Greg Robinson and Breshad Perriman. I mean, it's awesome. And I think no matter what, whether he's here in Cleveland or whether he goes on elsewhere, Freddie Kitchens deserves to be an offensive coordinator in the National Football League. I would like to keep him, but at the end of the day, it should be the head coach's decision.
There have been discussions about, Greg Williams interviewing for the head coaching spot of the Browns after the season is over. Should the Browns consider interviewing Freddie Kitchens for that job as well?
It's tough to say. I mean, it's a small sample size. It's 5 games, but I'm sure Baker Mayfield backs him 100%, and I'm sure some of the offensive players on the roster love Freddie Kitchens and what he's done with his offense. But I don't know if he's completely ready to be a head coach yet. I mean, it's tough to say, but you look at a guy like Eric Bieniemy, who's technically the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, but I think we all know at the end of the day it's Andy Reid making the calls, and Bieniemy's the run game coordinator, but he's going to get a look at as a potential head coach. He has just as much experience as Freddie Kitchens technically. So I would think maybe they'll interview Kitchens. No one really knows what John Dorsey's thinking at this point, despite all the rumors and stuff about who's a potential head coach. Maybe they do give Kitchens an interview. I wouldn't be opposed to it if they do it. I just want the Browns to go out and find that right guy that's going to be able to lead this organization in the right direction going forward.
We'll talk more about the head coaching stuff later, but we'll talk about those rumors later. But the idea that I have in my head, because there's been a lot of Bruce Arians talk recently, and he's kind of been campaigning for the job, which is kind of awesome. But you always are concerned. He had to retire due to health reasons, and the way that they could make it work here is, maybe Freddie Kitchens could get the head coaching job. Bruce Arians could come in as, maybe not the offensive coordinator, but as the offensive game planner or something similar to that. And that way, you'll still have Freddie Kitchens, calling plays and being in that role, but you'll also have that nice offensive mentor with Bruce Arians being underneath Freddie Kitchens, and that way, they work together in Arizona, so I would tend to think that they could work together here, and that way if Bruce Arians has to retire again, you're still keeping the same head coach, but you're not really disrupting the entire power structure of the team.
Right. I think the one scenario that's been floated around has been Bruce Arians comes in as the head coach, Kitchens remains offensive coordinator, Greg Williams remains defensive coordinator. And I don't think that really would disrupt anything. Everybody stays in their position. Obviously, Greg Williams, I think, would like to be the head coach at this point just because of what he's been able to do with this team in the last 5 games since taking over. But I don't think he would have a problem working with Bruce Arians. I would think they've probably crossed paths at some point during their coaching careers. But, bringing Arians in, you would have to have a plan in place because, like you said, Arians has had health issues. He's 66 years old. So I know everybody wants to go young and offensive, innovative, but Bruce Arians is a fine head coach. He proved that at Indy when he was interim for Chuck Pagano and what he did in Arizona. Like you said, him and Kitchens work together, maybe have a plan in place where after a few years, like 3-4 years, once Arians is ready to retire, Kitchens has learned enough under Arians that he would be able to take over as head coach. But, that's just all talk, and we have a lot of that time to discuss potential coaching situations. But, that's the one scenario that I would like.
Well, my thought was making Kitchens head coach and have Arians underneath Kitchens in case, something were to happen with Bruce and he needed to retire. So that way you're not interrupting the head coach thing at all.
I don't know if I could see that scenario playing out. I think Arians is if he's coming out of retirement, he would only be a head coach.
All right, like I said, we'll talk more about the coaching stuff a little bit later. Let's get back to the game. And Jarvis Landry today, he had a phenomenal game. He had 54 yards rushing. He had a rushing touchdown, almost had a second one. He had 57 yards receiving. We briefly talked about that throw that Baker Mayfield made to get Landry the football there for that long touchdown. So, Jarvis Landry, after a couple down games, he really seemed to turn it on today, and you could tell that there was a significant game plan to get him involved, especially in the running game today.
Absolutely. This is the second consecutive game Jarvis Landry's had a phenomenal performance for the team. Last week he had 6 catches for 103 yards. He didn't have any touchdowns, but and I think it was one of the DraftKings guys was like, Jarvis Landry's gonna have a breakout performance today, and that was a couple hours before the game. Lo and behold, he breaks off. He had a rushing touchdown early at the goal line. Great play call by Freddie Kitchens. Then he had that unbelievable catch on a deep route from Baker. And then he had that big 51-yard run, which everybody was more amazed at the fact that Luke Kuechly ran down Landry. People forget Kuechly has 4.5 speed. Landry's only got 4.7 speed, but still unbelievable performance by Landry. I know he's probably angry that it hasn't been the season statistically that he's been hoping for, but to get him involved in the offense while getting everybody else involved, and Landry's earning that money that he's making, it's good to see because he's a big part of this Browns offense, and if he contributes well, then everybody else I think will contribute big as well, and if it helps the Browns win, it's even better.
Absolutely. You're right. It really hasn't been the statistical season that I'm sure he wanted, but the experience that he's provided in that wide receiver room, especially with a group of young guys over there like Antonio Callaway, Perriman, and Rashard Higgins, that's certainly invaluable. And you can see his attitude rubbing off on the rest of the team. We all see how well he run blocks, and there was a couple plays today where you could see Antonio Callaway really blocking hard downfield, and to me, that comes from Jarvis Landry. That's Landry getting in these guys' ears and making these young guys really work hard. And it all goes back to his passionate speech that he had on Hard Knocks. I think it was the second episode where he pretty much put the entire wide receiver room on blast. And ever since then, things that have been really different with this wide receiver core, and people will say that he's not the best receiver, he's not this, he's not that, but in terms of being a leader on this football team, in terms of being a great mentor for all these young guys, he's pretty much everything that you can ask for in a veteran. As a veteran guy, even though he's been in the league only 4 or 5 years, being a veteran guy in that wide receiver room is something that this team really needed.
Yeah, I think, that's why I think John Dorsey went out and got him, because they needed high character guys. They needed guys that were leaders, and they needed guys that were going to inject this team in this with great culture and leadership going forward. I think you see it with Demarius Randall. I think you see it with, Baker Mayfield, Denzel Ward, Nick Chubb. Some of those guys are not the vocal type of leaders, but they're all leaders, and they lead by example. And, they want guys that'll bring direction to the organization. It's something that the organization didn't have. You can say all the way back to 99, but especially over the last couple years. And that's what Landry's done. I know a lot of people are don't like the fact that he's getting paid $14.5 million when he's not a number one receiver. But I would say he's earning his money on the football field and off the football field, because he performs well on the field, not all the time, but you can go to him as a surefire target, and he's that guy. But also he's a leader, and he leads by example, and he leads vocally, and it seems to rub off on the rest of the team.
And one guy I briefly mentioned that is rubbed off on is Breshad Perriman. He had a 66-yard completion to open up the game. He had a 15-yard catch later on in the game to give him 81 yards for the game, and led the Browns receivers in terms of receiving yards today. This is a guy who was a first-round pick, really struggled in Baltimore, and they ultimately decided to cut ties with him earlier this season. And ever since he joined the Browns, he's been absolutely wonderful. The issue that I'm not going to mention in fear of jinxing it, but the issue that he had in Baltimore has seemed to disappeared since he joined the Browns, and that's absolutely wonderful. I would say it's about time that one of these roster cuts goes in our favor, and right now it's really looking like it with Perriman.
Yeah, definitely. I talked about it earlier in the show that, John Dorsey's taking chances on guys that were first-round picks, and they didn't pan out with their original teams, but they're panning out here. Look at Greg Robinson, what he's done for the offensive line. They've given up 1 sack in the last 4 games, and he's had a huge part in that. And now Perriman, who I criticized on my site, vocally on here, and on Twitter when we picked him up, I was wondering, why would we take a chance on this guy? He couldn't stay healthy, and he couldn't put his hands fully on the ball. And, the Browns haven't asked him to do a lot, but when he gets that chance to get the ball, he's made plays. I mean, look today, the first offensive play of the game, and he told reporters after the game, he goes, Baker Mayfield told me to run my ass off down the field, and that's what he did. And had he not stumbled and fell, it could have been a 75-yard touchdown to open up the offensive series for the Browns. And when you have a deep threat like that, like him and Antonio Callaway, it's going to make things easier for Jarvis Landry and Rashard Higgins and David Njoku and everybody on that offensive side of the ball. Because when you have a vertical threat like Perriman is, like Callaway is, and I know people have been craving that since we got rid of Josh Gordon, it's going to open up everything on the offensive side.
Yeah, I would say that really true deep threat is what we're missing. I think Callaway can be that guy, but he's still young. And it's been nice so far with Perriman, and he's been able to show some of that. And if they're able to continue to utilize him that way, it's really, the more those throws are successful down the field like that, the more teams are going to have to respect it. So as we move on towards the rest of the season here, the teams are going to have to respect that deep ball from Baker Mayfield, and that's going to open up so much more underneath in terms of Landry and Joki and Callaway and whoever else. So I'm really looking forward to Perriman continuing to play very well. Do you think that he's absolutely locked up a spot on his roster for next season, or at least at some kind of training camp invite for sure?
Oh, yeah. I think the Browns will definitely try to keep him here for at least through training camp, because he's shown that when he gets his chance and Baker trusts him enough, if he can make the play, the Browns are going to continue to give him options on the offensive side. And looking at his stats, last year in Baltimore, he had 10 catches for 77 yards. Already this season with the Browns, and it's only been 7 games and limited production, he's already got 10 catches for 188 yards. So you can see that the Browns are trusting him and only giving him a little bit because I think they want him to keep working because, obviously he wasn't working hard enough in Baltimore, and it looks like it shows in his production. When you give him just enough, he can make a big play and change the whole complex of the game.
He is an unrestricted free agent, so they are going to have to re-sign him, and obviously they won't use a franchise tag on him now. So they're gonna hopefully they can work out something before the end of the season here. But I would absolutely love for him to be back, and hopefully he could be a part of this wide receiver core for years to come. Because as long as he can continue to be on the pace that he's on now, I absolutely think that he should be a part of this team moving forward. Lastly, offensively, Nick Chubb put together another solid game. He had 17 touches for 83 yards. He had another rushing touchdown. He's the first running back since Greg Pruitt in 1975 to have 5 straight games with a rushing touchdown. So, Nick Chubb, I would almost say that he should also be in consideration for Rookie of the Year. I would imagine he'll finish third behind whoever finishes first and second. Between Baker and Saquon Barkley, but I definitely think he's going to be in that top 3. And ever since the Browns traded away Carlos Hyde, what was that, week 4 or 5? He's on pace to definitely be over 1,000 yards for the season, and for him to do that, and basically sitting for the first month plus, really shows how good this kid is, and it's just another home run that John Dorsey hit in the draft this year.
Definitely. He needs 80 yards per game, the final 3, to hit 1,000. And if the Browns feed him like they have since he became the starter, he could very well hit that. But not only has he been great as a running back, but as a receiver, I think we talked about this on the last episode. Not a lot of people were talking about him out of Georgia as a receiver, just because he didn't have a lot of film on that and that aspect of his game. But Freddie Kitchens has given him that chance, and when he's been able to catch the ball, he's been able to go out and make plays as a receiver. And we hate to see that Duke Johnson's not getting a lot of the ball. And speaking of Duke, condolences to him and his family over the loss of his grandmother. I'm sure his mind was elsewhere today, but with Chubb, he's been phenomenal. And yeah, he should be up there for Offensive Rookie of the Year, but obviously Baker and Saquon Barkley have overshadowed him, but he'll definitely finish up there towards the top of the voting results for that. He's been great, and like you said, it's another home run pick by Dorsey. And there's a lot of people that wanted the Browns to take Barkley at number 1 over a quarterback, and I think Dorsey is making a lot of people eat crow with how Chubb's performed this year.
And not only it was a home run pick in terms of the draft, but it was also a home run by John Dorsey to pull the trigger on that trade for Carlos Hyde. In the 6 games that Carlos Hyde has been with the Jacksonville Jaguars after the trade, he's run for 11 yards, 5 yards, 44 yards, 33 yards, 36 yards, and 0 yards in their Thursday night matchup against Tennessee. And for Carlos Hyde, ever since the trade, he's run for 80, 65, 85, 176, 84, but only he had 31 against Houston, and then he had about 80 today. So, the difference between the two backs is significant, and you could just tell. I love watching him run because whenever there's contact, his feet don't stop moving. He's always falling forward. He never seems to get pushed back. And, the Browns haven't had that kind of running back in a long time. And when you're a bruising back like that, you just continue to wear down defenses, throughout the entire football game. And, even late in the fourth quarter, he has the ability to really gash defenses with his speed. He's not only a power back, but he's pretty quick as well. So, he's just been a tremendous upgrade over Carlos Hyde this season ever since they made that trade. And, kudos to John Dorsey. They brought Hyde in here in free agency. He played okay while he was here, but you can see the talent that Carlos Hyde had behind him, or that Nick Chubb had behind Carlos Hyde, and for Dorsey to pull the trigger on the trade to get Chubb into the starting lineup, I think was an absolute home run. And having our quarterback and running back of the future as our top 3 picks in this past draft is absolutely awesome. So kudos to John Dorsey, and hopefully Chubb hits this 1,000 yards. I think he will. He just start till week 7, so it was a month and a half, and he's on pace to hit 1,000 yards. So that's going to be absolutely fantastic. Talking about the defense, the defense today bent, but it didn't break. I think that's been the story of the defense the entire season so far. They didn't have Denzel Ward out there today, but Demarius Randall and TJ Carey, Carey had his ups and downs this game, but when it really mattered late in the fourth quarter there, Carey played extremely well. So, the secondary has been beat up by injuries all season long, especially the cornerbacks, and it's continuing to be the next guy up. And just talk about the secondary and their performance today and what they were able to do and really keeping everybody at bay. Their biggest threat today was Christian McCaffrey, and he's the one that gashed him the most. But I don't think Devin Funchess had a catch. He might have had one. So they did a really good job at eliminating DJ Moore and Devin Funchess and keeping those receivers at bay today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was, that was the one thing I was worried about, was how was the Browns secondary going to perform against these Panthers weapons, because, Denzel Ward was going to be out. Like you said, TJ Carey's been iffy. Breon Body Calhoun's been iffy, but all in all, they had a great game. Curtis Samuel had a good performance today, 4 catches, 80 yards. Moore had 5 catches for 67. Obviously, like you said, McCaffrey was a threat today. The Panthers tight end Ian Thomas was a big threat offensively, but they kept everybody in check. Carey had a couple pass breakups. Obviously, Demarius Randall had the sealing interception late in the fourth quarter to seal the win for us. But all in all, I thought they had a great game. Like you said, bend but don't break. They held the Panthers to 3 points in the second half, which is huge. And this defense, while they give up a lot of yardage, they don't give up a lot of points, and that's the big thing. They have their moments where they do give up some big plays, and like last week, they gave up 23 points and put the Browns in a hole, but it wasn't all on them. Baker threw 3 picks, but this defense, while they might not be good statistically wise, I think they are a solid defense, and I think they are one of the underrated defenses in the NFL.
Yeah, they showed the graphic early on in the football game. Defensive ranks, and the Browns were pretty much dead last in both passing and in rushing. But they seem to, you mentioned they give up a lot of yards, but they're not giving up a ton of points. And to only hold the Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton to just 3 points there in that second half is incredible. They had a goal line stand when they needed it. That's the second one that they've had in their last couple home games. To really prevent the other team from winning and coming back. It might have been in the Atlanta game that I'm thinking of, but still, that having those goal line stands are absolutely awesome. And for that defense to continue to play well against good quarterbacks this season, they played well against Drew Brees. They played well against Joe Flacco. They played well against Cam Newton. There's others in there as well. And, they seem to step up when they're playing one of these big-name quarterbacks. And, it's just awesome to see that this defense, while they've suffered so many injuries this season, and, Larry Ogunjobi today playing out there with that messed up bicep, he was still extremely effective in terms of stopping the run. And, he just played his heart out today, and I'm sure he's in a ton of pain having that massive brace on and having that injury, but he played well today. Myles Garrett had another sack today. He's closing in on the Browns' single-season record. He has 12.5 now. So, this defense is extremely talented. And as they continue, we've talked about this before, as they continue to get more depth on this defense, it's just going to be exponentially better, keeping those other guys fresh out there and, replacing some guys when there are injuries like we've had this entire season.
Yeah, definitely. And, I want to talk about Myles Garrett because, there's some Browns fans out there that think Myles Garrett's overrated and he doesn't do enough being the number one pick last year. And it just baffles me. And I think people just look at the box score, see that he's only, or his season stats, and they say he's only got 37 tackles. He's only got 12.5 sacks. You got to go in depth. And if you're watching Myles Garrett, if you're focusing straight on him when he's playing defense, you will see the kind of impact he makes, whether he's facing a guy one-on-one to the point where they have to start double teaming him. I mean, if you go in depth into his stats, he's got 10 tackles for a loss. He's got 25 QB hits. He's got 3 forced fumbles. I mean, and when you compare him to other pass rushers that have come out in recent years, he's got more sacks than J.J. Watt at this point. I think he's got more sacks than Joey Bosa had at this point. I think I've seen he's got 19.5 sacks through 24 career games. Comparison, Derek Thomas, who is one of the greatest pass rushers ever, had 25 sacks through 24 games. So Myles Garrett's only 5-6 sacks off of him. I mean, it is crazy that some people saying he's not doing enough. You take him off the field, I don't think we'd be talking about how good this Browns defense is. Myles Garrett is a generational type talent, and we should be thankful that the Browns were bad enough to draft him in 2017.
And I'm going to give a massive shout out here to our buddy Jake Burns. If you really want to go in depth and see what Myles Garrett does on a week-to-week basis, go check out Jake Burns. Go check out his Browns film breakdown. He'll be able to show you on there everything that you need to know about Myles Garrett and the havoc that he's able to wreak on that defensive line. And he's just able to completely blow up plays time and time again. And while you may not be happy with the numbers, which is ridiculous because the numbers are really damn good, it doesn't show up on the box score, everything that he does for this football team. All right. I think, is there anything else about the game specifically that you want to talk about, or are you ready to move on?
I'm ready to move on.
All right. We mentioned at the beginning of the show that there's a certain P word that we are going to begin talking about because there's a realistic shot that the Browns can make the playoffs. Now, there's an outside chance that they could win the division. In order for that to happen, the Pittsburgh Steelers have to lose the 3 remaining games that they have. They play New England, at New Orleans, and then are home to Cincinnati to close out the season. They have to finish with a better record than the Ravens. The Ravens can only win one of their 3 remaining games, which is Tampa Bay, at Los Angeles Chargers, and then home against the Browns. And the Browns have to win out. They play at Denver, they're home against Cincinnati, and then they're at Baltimore to close out the season. So while there's a small chance that they could win the division, I think it's certainly possible based on who the Steelers play there. If the Browns and Steelers finish with the same record at 8-7-1, the Steelers have the tiebreaker based on the head-to-head, even though we did tie, the Steelers won the second matchup, so they have the tiebreaker against us, so that's why the Steelers have to lose all 3 for us to win the division. But we're certainly still alive in terms of getting that second wild card spot. We can't get that first one. The Chargers are, I think, 9-3 now, or so, or 4, or are they 10-3 now? They might be 10-3 now. But so they can still get that second one. Baltimore's still holding on to that one right now. So I would say there's a realistic shot that maybe not a realistic shot, but there's a legitimate shot that they could make the playoffs this season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it right now, and Daryl Ryder from 92.3 The Fan tweeted this out after the game. The Dolphins have to go 1-2. The Colts have to go 1-2. The Titans have to go 1-2. Denver, we got to take care of business next weekend against Denver, and then we can legitimately talk about it, because then we're 6-7-1. But if the Dolphins, Colts, and Titans go 1-2, if the Ravens lose out, which it's going to be tough because they have Tampa next week. So, but who knows if Tampa can pull off the upset, then they're 7-7. If all these teams can go 1-2 down the stretch, Week 17 could set up a showdown with the Browns and the Ravens. The Ravens being 7-8 and the Browns being 7-1. That would be the win and you're in game. And I know people, I think it was you that was talking about, Sunday Night Football being Browns, Ravens, winner goes to the playoffs. Somebody said that they don't play that Sunday night game anymore in Week 17, but maybe the NFL makes an exception, because if the Browns are playing for a playoff spot Week 17, it's going to be the biggest story in the NFL to talk about an 0-16 team from a year ago playing in the playoffs. Obviously, a lot has to happen. But the most important thing is the Browns have to win next week against Denver, who are 6-7, and they're still in the wild card hunt too. So every game, I think from this point, the Browns should be playing it like a playoff game and leaving it all out on the field, because they have everybody believing. They definitely believe. And Greg Williams said after the game, he goes, "Look what happens when you play like this." And we can play with anybody in the NFL. It doesn't matter how good their defense is. Everybody wants to make excuses about it. The Browns are playing, and they're believing like they can beat anybody, and it's got the fans believing. And that's why even at 5-7-1, we're talking playoffs, which a month ago, even a month and a half ago, I think would have been crazy talk.
The sad part is if they didn't have kicker issues week 1 and week 2, we might be winning the division right now. That's the sad part. This team, granted, we still might have Hugh Jackson as our head coach, but, if, the results of the games have stayed the same this entire season, it's incredible to think about how this team is really a kicker away of being 7-5 or 7-7 right now, or 7. Right. You know what I'm trying to say. We would have 7 wins right now, and potentially leading the division.
I'll make it easier. If we didn't have the kicker issues, which means we beat Pittsburgh, and instead of tying, and then we beat New Orleans, we're 7-6, and then you take in the fact that we should have beat Oakland, but the refs screwed us. We should be 8-5 and leading the AFC North with 3 weeks to go. But we're in the spot we're in. We still have a chance. It's a long shot, but these next 3 weeks are going to be fun, because the NFL, we've seen anything can happen. And my scenario of Browns-Ravens Week 17 for the second wild card spot, it could happen. And if it does, this city's going to go crazy. And it might even go crazier than June 19th, 2016, when the Cavs won the championship. That's how crazy I think the Browns potentially being in the playoffs could be.
Could you imagine if Week 17 was a home game instead of an away game, and that was the scenario? Could you imagine the electricity in that stadium, what that would feel like?
It would be the toughest ticket in Cleveland sports history. Tougher than the NBA Finals, tougher than the World Series. It would be the crazy. Scalpers would be be going to the bank.
Oh, they'd have a field day.
Oh, it'd be crazy.
And to correct something you said, the Ravens can go into the last week being 8-7, because if the Browns beat them, the Ravens will be 8-8, the Browns will be 8-7-1, and we would still have a better winning percentage than them. So they can split the next 2 games, and as long as we beat them that third game, we would get ahead. We would be ahead of them. So that kind of helps out our cause a little bit. So look. It's December 9th. We're talking about playoffs with the Cleveland Browns. I don't know what more you can ask going into the season. I don't think going into the season you could have predicted that, but here we are. We're at this point, and I'll tell you what, it feels damn good to sit here and talk about that P word, which has been so elusive for the Browns, and we haven't been able to talk about it in over 10 years.
And to think 6 weeks ago you wanted to talk draft.
Shut up. I'll fully eat that one. All right, let's move on here. To wrap up, I said earlier we'll talk about some of the head coaching rumors. Matt Campbell, the head coach of Iowa State, got an extension today. I think it was through 2024 to remain at Iowa State, so it definitely looks like he will not be jumping to the NFL this season. Are you surprised that Matt Campbell wasn't going to entertain any offers to be NFL head coach?
Yeah, I just think, I know, all the reports said that, NFL teams respect him and they love him. And there was the reports that John Dorsey had a much appreciation and respect for Matt Campbell for the work he's done, not only at Iowa State, but Toledo. I just think he probably used those NFL rumors as a way to get an extension. I honestly think he's not ready for that big jump yet, going from Iowa State, which is, still one of the lower level. Well, I would say they're like a mid-level Big 12 team, all the way to the NFL. I don't think he's ready for that. I would think, maybe at this point next year, there's rumors about him making a jump to a major college program that needs a head coach, USC, for instance, maybe. But, I don't think he was really ready to make that jump. But I still think the NFL, there's a future for him there. I think you've seen what he's been able to do, pumping NFL athletes out of his college program. So I don't think this is the last time we've heard about Matt Campbell tied to the NFL, but I honestly think he wasn't ready for it just yet.
I think really maybe the only job he would have left Iowa State for would have been the one down in Columbus after Urban retired. But since they gave that to Ryan Day, I think that's why he decided to stay at Iowa State. There has been a lot of talk recently about Mike McCarthy since he got fired, but Jason La Canfora has said not so fast on that one. It appears that it's obvious to draw all the connections between Mike McCarthy, John Dorsey, Alonzo Highsmith, and Elliot Wolf, but La Canfora said to not jump so fast on all those connections that it may not be as quick to connect the dots as we all think.
Yeah, and he added that people that have worked with McCarthy think that the Panthers and the Ravens jobs, which both could be open by the end of the year. I think the Panthers job for sure. The Ravens, I think it depends on how the season ends and whether or not they make the playoffs, if they're going to keep or depart from John Harbaugh. We talked about McCarthy on the last episode. I don't think either one of us, he's one of our top choices for Browns head coach. Obviously, he's got a great resume, but, there's stuff behind the scenes that has people concerned, including myself. So to hear that it's far from a slam dunk, and I know a lot of people still don't trust anything La Canfora reports. I would disagree with them. He has gotten better, and I would say he was right on a lot of the stuff that he reported about the Browns in the past. I trust him with this. A lot of other people have said that McCarthy to the Browns isn't a slam dunk. So, everybody that was worried about McCarthy to the Browns being a done deal, I think we can all just sit back and relax for now, at least.
It seemed like there's a weekly tradition of every Sunday with Jason La Canfora of him, writing a piece on the Browns Sunday morning right before the game, and it would just kind of set this whole overtone for the game, and it would leak into the post game press conference and whatnot, and that seems to have gone away with John Dorsey being there this season. So it makes you wonder who was feeding those stories to Jason La Canfora last season and previously as well. So. The last head coach that we're going to talk about is very interesting. We kind of talked about it a little bit on our preview piece that Jim Harbaugh, it was reported or leaked or whatever, that Harbaugh would be interested in leaving Michigan to coach the Browns because of Baker Mayfield. He has since come out, and, I guess he told Adam Schefter, but he told Schefter that he will not be leaving Michigan. Did you have any expectations of Harbaugh leaving Michigan to coach the Browns at all, or were you not in belief of any of those rumors that circulated?
I always kept it open because it's Jim Harbaugh. He's a loose cannon at times, and like I said on the last episode, I think he's a better NFL coach than he is a college coach. I was hopeful that he would be open to returning to the NFL and hopeful that he would really consider the Browns, but obviously, like we said on the last episode, I think in his mind, he's got unfinished business at Michigan. I think he wants to prove that he can put Michigan back on the map. I think he's done that right for the most part. Obviously, he hasn't been able to beat Ohio State since his return to Michigan. We'll see how it goes now that Urban Meyer's out of the picture. I don't think anything's going to change really, but we still have the game to decide that every November. But I do think at some point that we will see Harbaugh back on the NFL sidelines. Obviously, it won't be next season, but I wouldn't close that door just yet because I think at some point he's going to realize he can't get it done at the college level, and he's far better off at the NFL.
I think if he can't beat Ohio State next year at home without Urban Meyer being there, I think he's gone. I don't know if they'll fire him, but I think he'll decide to jump ship at that point back to the NFL. So I think he has at least one more year at Michigan, but we'll see. To kind of keep it in the Harbaugh family, there was another article this morning that even though the Baltimore Ravens have seemed to have turned it around recently with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, and unfortunately he got hurt today at the end of the game there, but they're 3-1 with Lamar Jackson as their starter to kind of propel the Ravens back into the playoff picture. And right now they're still holding on to that second wild card spot. Even if they make the playoffs, it seems there's an article that John Harbaugh might not be back as the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. So if that's the case, he's another guy that I would absolutely consider to be the Browns head coach next year.
Absolutely. He's on my short list for sure of candidates that I really want. And I think he'll be pursued by everybody. I'm sure the Panthers will go after him. I'm sure the Packers will go after him. The Broncos, I think they're probably going to make a coaching change. He'll be on their list too. He'll be at the top of many teams' list. It's just, will he be okay with this structure in Cleveland working under John Dorsey? I think he will, just because of his history in Baltimore, working under Ozzie Newsome and, all the executives in Baltimore. So it's just a matter of, are the Browns going to be aggressive in going after him? And we talked about this when the rumors started about him exiting Baltimore. He's going to have to bring a solid offensive mind with him because the guys that he's had in Baltimore haven't been that good. We've seen the last few weeks that their offense has changed a lot under Lamar Jackson, and it's looked pretty good for the most part, especially the running game. But he's got to have a great offensive mind with him that's going to elevate Baker and to his maximum potential. If it's not going to happen, much like Mike McCarthy, then the Browns need to go in another direction. But Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in the league, I think, and he should definitely be on the Browns short list once he becomes available.
And if they bring in Harbaugh, that's an absolute situation where they could keep Freddie Kitchens as offensive coordinator if things continue to progress with Baker Mayfield.
Absolutely. That would be a great scenario, is if Harbaugh comes in, would be, open to keeping Freddie Kitchens as offensive coordinator just because Harbaugh seeing the work that Kitchens has been able to do with Baker as well as the entire Browns offense. That would be a perfect scenario if he was willing to keep Kitchens. And if I don't know what he would do with Greg Williams, but we've seen the Baltimore's always had a solid defense, including this year. They've had a pretty good defense. They've maintained Patrick Mahomes for the most part today in their game against the Chiefs. They ultimately lost, but if whoever they brought in on defense, I think would be a good get.
All right. I think that's it for head coaching rumors. The only thing I think we have left is to discuss our top dog of the football game, and we put our poll out there, and the final results of that poll, Baker Mayfield got 62% of the vote for his performance today. Jarvis Landry got 33%. Breshad Perriman got 3%. And Demarius Randall got 2%. you agree with the fans' pick of picking Baker Mayfield as the top dog of the game today?
Baker was good, but if it was me and I did cast a vote, I went with Jarvis Landry, and I thought he was the top dog. To see what he was able to do, not only receiving the ball, but also running the ball with the creative play calling out of Freddie Kitchens. Landry set us up for some big touchdowns today. And he had a big touchdown. So, I would give him the top dog award, but I can see why people love Baker, and there's no problem with that. He's changed this whole town around, and especially the organization. So I can see why he's the top dog, according to the fans.
And, it was interesting post-game. Landry said that I think waking up feeling dangerous is contagious. I absolutely love that. This team seems to completely feed off of Baker Mayfield. And to me, he's my top dog of the game. Essentially, he went perfect today. He had those 4 drops, and those were his 4 incompletions. So I'm saying he had a perfect day today, because if they catch those footballs, he goes perfect. So, I love Baker. You got it right. The Browns fans absolutely love him. He's the undisputed leader of this football team, and with what he's able to do week in and week out, even though he's had some rough patches, being a rookie, which we all expected. I think that Baker Mayfield is unquestionably the franchise quarterback that we've been looking for a very long time, and to have him here, see him improve week in and week out, and to talk about the playoffs like we did today, that all falls on Baker Mayfield. That all changed when he came into the game against the New York Jets. You felt that energy in the stadium absolutely changed, and from that point on, things have been completely different this season. And to me, that's all the credit in the world on Baker Mayfield. Is there anything else that you want to discuss before we get on out of here?
Yeah, we covered everything, man.
All right. We will be back. We're going to be recording on Wednesday. We should have a special guest for that one. I won't reveal yet, just until everything's all wrapped up with that. But we're going to be having a very special guest on Wednesday. So if you want to go ahead and plug everything you got going on at the North Coast Sports, I know there's another Cavs trade. There's some Indians trade rumors going on, and obviously with Urban leaving Ohio State, you had some stuff on that as well. So if you want to go ahead and plug everything.
Yeah, as always, follow me on Twitter at JMcCurryCLE. Check out the NorthCoastSports.com. Like Anthony said, I've been busy over there with Indians trade rumors. The winter meetings are this week, so expect some activity with the Indians, whether it's rumors or actual trades going down. Obviously the Cavs trade, Delly's back in the CLE. That was, for a backup point guard, as much love as Delly got, and with good reason. It's good to have him back in the wine and gold, and we got the Ohio State coverage as well. Talking about Haskins, finished third in the Heisman, Urban's retirement, Ryan Day, the new head coach. Got a lot of stuff over at the NorthCoastSports.com, so go check that out. And check out the North Coast Sportscast. It's the other podcast that myself and Anthony do. We'll be dropping a new episode this week, talking Indians winter meetings. We're going to be recording that later this week. It should be out by Wednesday or Thursday. So check that out. We're on Twitter at NC Sportscast, and the podcast is available everywhere.
An interesting fact about Delly, the Cavs are 4-0 in their last 4 games with him on the roster, and of course 3 of those games being the last 3 games of the 2016 NBA Finals. So it's great to have Delly back. I'm excited that he's back, and hopefully he's a good mentor to Colin Sexton. But you can hear all about that over on the NC Sportscast podcast. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Anthony Joki, Joki. You can follow the podcast at 1085 Gridiron on Facebook and Twitter. You can find the podcast on any platform that you can think of, including Spotify, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Be sure to subscribe, rate, review our podcast. We absolutely appreciate it. Any constructive criticism, compliments are always appreciated. And with all that, we're going to get on out of here. Like I said, we'll be back on Wednesday night, Thursday morning, depending on when it gets uploaded. But until then, and as always, this was another 1085 Victory Pod, and go Browns.